Okay, so I'm going to go through this concept of glute activation, especially talking about the lateral glute muscles. Namely, the glute medius is the one that tends to be the most challenged for a lot of people to feel and activate. And if we think about muscles, they need to be active and you need to have good control of them to be able to feel them, to be able to strengthen them. So, this is an easy thing I tend to bring up and at least assess with a lot of my riders when I'm doing leg fits. So it's an easy thing that you can kind of take yourself through and get a general idea of, do you have good glute activation, and are you one of those people that should just be doing the standard standing exercises that challenge the glutes a lot more in a functional manner and is a lot better for strength going forward. So I'll talk to you about my progression and what you should think about, how you can make it a little bit easier on you, and then how can we make that a lot more functional and useful for you long term. So in general, I like to start people in a sideline position, get that activation, and then quickly move them to standing where we're going to make those glutes work a lot more functionally, especially for cycling. We want to make you feel like you have good glute function in a relatively upright position, or if you had to step off the bike to catch yourself, you have that ability to, and we're avoiding injury risk. So we'll start with the really dreaded clamshell exercise. It's where a lot of people say that's your best ability to use the glutes. I think it is true, but we also want to make sure that we're not staying there forever. So what I'll basically have people do is lie onto their side, get comfortable lying on your side, because again, our main focus is making the glute muscles work. So when you're here, the angle of the hip and the knee matters a lot for people when they're first starting and to really feel that glute function. So most of the time, I'll start people around halfway between 90 degrees at the hip, so 45, and then roughly 90, maybe even 60 degrees at the knee. This is something that I want people to change, because if you feel where the glute muscles are here, where I'm closer to 90 at the hip and 90 at the knee, and then you can even maybe say 90 at the hip and different knee angle, and vice versa. You can play with those angles basically. But again, somewhere in the middle, 45 degrees at the hip, 60 or so to 90 degrees at the knee, and then you're lifting the legs apart, trying to feel the hip in the back, basically the glute muscle work, which is the back part of the hip. We want that muscle to feel like it has good function, can get really tight, and you have good control of that's doing the job, and nothing else necessarily. Not in the thigh, not in the hamstring, not in the back. So the pieces to this is keep those hips rolled forward. So you're thinking that top leg is basically longer than the bottom leg. That's a pretty good cue to make people feel this exercise be more effective. And then when you lift, you're not allowing those hips to roll backwards at all. And you don't want to be holding on or anything. So hips rolled forwards, that top leg is longer, lift apart, hold that for a period of time, and then you can, again, play with the angles to try and make that feel more effective. When you're doing this, if you have a hard time, you can add a light band or another, a little bit heavier band to make this feel like the muscles are being active a bit more. But the typical progression is to actually take the band away and feel the muscle work on demand very quickly. You can tap the muscle. That's another good cue to make it work. And then you can play again with the angles. You should feel like that muscle can be active in all positions if you have a really good function of that muscle. So from there, this is a starting point, and then I quickly move people to the slightly more challenging one of the side lying leg straight hip abduction, which is basically the legs coming apart. So again, hips rolled forward. Main goal is that top posterior hip muscle, which is basically in the back of your hip, the line of the pants, is a really good area to basically say you want to feel it all behind the line of the pants and below the waistband. It's that top corner, that top back corner of the hip is where we're going for. So again, for this one, hips rolled forward, legs straight, lift that leg up and slightly backwards relatively. It's not a big backwards moment, but your hips being rolled forwards is going to make you feel like it's slightly more backwards. 90% of that should feel like it's in that glute med. It's that back corner that we're going for. Not in the thigh, not in the hamstring, not in the front. Most people will also do that rock backwards and lift from there. That's a really good way to get your TFL or that front hip muscle. That's not the goal. So we're going for the roll forward, bring that leg up and slightly back. So those are the progressions in lying on your side. And then again, we don't stay there for long. You use that as a warm up. Make that muscle feel like it has good control every time with no resistance. And then we're up and we're standing from there. So the standing ones, I have other videos to go through this stuff, but it would be something like a single leg clamshell one where you're having that leg come out and back, torso is slightly forward. So we're not only working the leg that's moving, but we're also working the other standing leg. Then you can do something like the forward T. That's going to work mostly the standing leg, and you're repeating that. You might add a march to it to increase the challenge even more. And then we can do something even more progressive, like the power type of motions of a lateral jump, where that landing leg is getting a lot of glute load, like we would need for progressing for someone in terms of reducing injury risk on the bike. So that is your very basic progression. There's a lot of key points to everything that we just went over. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to help move you along in the right direction.